What is up, folks? Casual Dad here, and tonight I'm going to go ahead and take a crack at a campaign guide. And this is a really, really good one to do a campaign guide on because, number one, it was requested, so someone actually asked for this. And number two, this is a really good beginner-friendly guide. So I'm actually going to go ahead and jump in here, and I'm going to focus on this both from the perspective of a new player who's really still doesn't have their max deck points, is even on like the minimum end of the deck points, just to kind of talk about how you can work around that. And then also touch on what I personally think is going to be really, really successful in this campaign. Now, I have not started on this one. I'm not going to play to max energy on this one, but I will go ahead and show you this. And right out of the gate, I want to go ahead and highlight that this is an unusually favorable campaign, especially for new players, with the biggest reason being your opponent is Necrons. And the one thing you absolutely can guarantee when you're going up against Necrons is they will have no Psychers. So you can really double down on a psychic deck or psychic abilities or psychic activations, knowing that you will not get hit back with psychic powers, which is awesome. Add to that the modifiers are that you actually get the fight. All right, I missed that the first time. The modifiers are that you do have a full-size deck. So you get the 200 deck points and 8 bodyguards, so even if you're starting out, you'll see that. The other one here is that Aura of Rage really, really benefits orcs. So we'll still talk about both. Okay, so if you have minimum deck points, I would go ahead and go with one of the cheaper warlords. And I mentioned that that the opponent doesn't have any psychic cards. So the number one best character to go ahead and do that with is going to be Zagstruck. The reason why, of course, is Zagstruck's ability is that when a friendly orc card would ready, it instead makes an attack for 100% of its melee stat. So if it doesn't, I don't know if the card cannot make a melee attack already as normal. That's if a card doesn't have a melee attack. Don't do that. Especially in this campaign where it's buffing up melee attacks. So for him himself, just to recap for folks who haven't seen this, his ability is a ready. So when you play him on the board, if there's an opposing card on the board, if it's not a total wipe, he will just hit it for his maximum melee attack. So he'll just nail that card for 71 damage across the board. And the same is true of any card you put in there that also has the ready trait. So I pretty much always start my Zagstruck's decks with this bad boy and this one here, because both of those do always get that immediate ready. And then your Haymaker Punch, the one you really want to throw in there in most of those decks, is going to be this guy here. This one is hilarious. Is one of, I think, only 2 cards in the entire game that can attack 3 times when he's played without getting hit back. You've got the Ready for Zagstruck. Then you've got the Furious Charge, where he'll go ahead and just hit normally as he would, although a little bit weaker. And then with Zagstruck, you can do the Psychic activation, and he'll hit a 3rd time. And as long as you're not up against Psychers, he'll just wail on something before he takes any damage back. This card is terrifying since they added the secondary traits and put him into Zagstruck. Like, this guy's amazing. His legendary is pretty rare, takes a while to level up, but is just tremendously powerful in your Zagstruck deck. So we'll go ahead and pick this one. I'll throw him in there. I'm going to tweak this a bit. With the modifier, adding +3 to your durability to your melee attack stat every single turn, you do want to throw in some shield, some regen, some tough things that will benefit from that and stay on the board long enough to, do their thing. And you can see I've rounded out, so I've got the shields guy there, Thugruck here, and then I've rounded out with a cheap Inspire, just to make sure I hit that below 100 deck points, when I thought that this didn't allow 200 deck points. And then I've also got a couple other cards, one of them being Taunt, to help keep your cards alive, and then the other one also including Furious Charge. Thug is one of my favorite orc cards to round out decks, because he does have that Furious Charge. He's got very good hit points and melee damage for the cost. He's an excellent card to throw in there. We're going to go ahead and do this one. It's going to be super, super fast. And I want to go ahead and talk about the modifier a little bit before I do go ahead and talk about another deck that I think may perform a little bit better. So this one is really good if your cards are lower level, because you could really cheese your opponent. Being able to just attack without getting hit back is an incredible ability. And we're just going to watch this guy just absolutely wail on this guy. He may actually kill him, and we're going to help guarantee that. So this war boss may even just kill him outright. In fact, I believe he should, just based on the amount of damage he's going to do. So 42 damage, 105 damage, and then splat. So there we go. And a couple things about that. So you want, there's a little, well, that's a bummer. We'll try that again. Oh no, there it goes. It is a little bit of a trap, and I'll go ahead and play out some of these to get to some bigger opponents. It is a little bit of a trap that the modifier for this campaign encourages you to play slowly, because the longer your cards are on the table, the more they will build up their melee stat. Now again, like I said, that is a trap, because you actually don't want to stay that long, because Necrons do have very, very powerful melee cards. Obviously, they're not very dangerous at the first couple levels of the campaign, but as you start getting into it, get into the teens and 20s, you will see that they benefit from that increased melee stat more than orcs do in some cases. So you want to watch out for that, especially if your cards are lower level. So you want hyper-aggressive decks to kind of make up for your lower level cards, so you're clearing the board a little faster so that you're making sure that you are benefiting from the trait more than your opponent. That's kind of the just sort of basic thing to think about with this. If the opponent was Tau, it would go sort of the other way, where you would could fight a little bit more slowly. But against Necrons, so far we've seen pretty squishy, shooty decks, but that's not going to be the case the whole time. And some of them can really pack a punch. They start throwing the Nightbringer in there, they start throwing in Seamet, they can really give you some trouble with those melee attacks. So again, hyper-aggressive deck that uses readies and psychic attacks to go ahead and deal damage without getting hit back. That's a really great place to start for any newer player with lower level cards. You can, I would say, cheese it, but you get a really good value out of underpowered cards this way. So like Zagstruck is an excellent starting warlord, both in the ladder because of his just base stat and because he can really get a lot more value out of cards than you would expect based on their points cost. Obviously he gets very powerful with higher level cards, but you want him to, he's a really good successful warlord to start out with. I'm going to go ahead and switch it to another one that I think is going to end up being a little bit better this campaign, who has sort of the opposite tactic. And this is one that does rely on being pretty high leveled, so you do want to watch out for this. But Mozrog himself is absolutely terrifying, and mine is just a hair from where it really, really gets scary, but he's got a ton of hit points, has a decent melee stat, and then has that Berserk to start charging up. But the secret sauce for this guy is his ability. Whenever a friendly orc card makes a melee attack, it gains 10% of its base wounds. So your cards are just doing what they want to do and then healing for it. So he is absolutely amazing with your big, heavy-hitting Berserk cards. So these two make up a big difference. This guy's a mainstay, but mine, of course, is level 3. So he's not really going to make it up yet, but he's getting there. And then I do also actually like throwing him in there, but we'll go ahead and get with our Medicae. Yeah, this guy. And you can do other Medicae if you want. This one's my personal favorite because he has great stats as well as being Medicae, and I just unlocked that level 9 for that regen. So he's healing twice, and also hitting himself with Medicae, so he's a very powerful piece. Now, it would be nice to be able to throw in our Inspire there, but we'll have to change that a little bit. 27A. It's a good one, especially to round out the melee focus of the deck, but what else do we have for 27? We can do this guy. This guy's probably better. Ah, yeah, that's better. So small deck, but hyper durable deck that hits incredibly hard. And this is going to perform really well early on, of course, because it's relatively easy. But then later on, you can see how that is the opposite effect of Zagstruck, where Zagstruck is you try to clear the board as quickly as possible. This guy just tries to outlast the opponent and really use both his ability and then also the modifier for the campaign to just really plow through things with just pure brute strength, which Mozrog should be very capable of doing, or I should say his bodyguards should be very capable of doing, especially if he does that. And so this, again, is really, really early in the campaign, so I'm not going to spend too much time showing you these because you will have seen them before. I just wanted to show a couple builds and talk a little bit about kind of the strategy here. If your cards are high level, I do expect the Mozrog deck to outperform the Zagstruck deck in this campaign, but it's totally possible that could go either way. It really depends on what surprises the Necrons have in store for us and kind of which way they lean. Considering how much Ulthakar we've seen, they'll probably have a mix of ranged and melee, but also lean heavily on melee, which makes sense with this modifier. So you can go heavy against them with a ranged deck, but of course you lose out on the benefit of the modifier if you go that route. So I personally would go melee, And my honest recommendation is to go with Zagstruck. Zagstruck can just absolutely wreck Tyranids. He is the Tyranid counter warlord. Excuse me, Necrons. He's the Necron counter warlord. What am I doing? All this purple is confusing me. But I do like the new artistic design. It's pretty great. But yes, so I would recommend running with Zagstruck and just trying to clear the board as quickly as possible. That's true of most levels. If you have really highly leveled cards, at that point I do think that Mazrok is going to outperform Zagstruck in the late game. But it's hard to say. Zagstruck is such an effective warlord with such an effective ability for this scenario that it could absolutely not be the case. I'd have to see it through to the end, but that's my impression right now. Having been through a few of these, it is funny, I should remember, but I always kind of forget when the new campaign rolls around. You kind of forget what you went through in the last one. I just know that my general rule of thumb when taking on Necrons, if I know it's going to be Necrons, is to psycho the heck out of them. They don't have any poison, they don't have any psychic, and they have extremely limited taunt. And those are all things you can kind of play around to sort of give yourself the best advantage possible at any time you know you're facing Necrons. But what they trade for that is they do generally have very good stats, so you do need to watch out for that, especially late game. And their ranged is going to be very devastating, especially their burst damage. Something you're going to hit kind of the middle ranks in this campaign and then run into as kind of a mix later on as well. Going to go ahead and do that Zagstruck one more time just to see how it performs against a slightly scarier thing than I had the first time. Still isn't even level 10 in the campaign, so it's going to be pretty easy, but still, just want to show the deck. It's orcs. Everybody loves orcs. Orcs are fun. Ooh, now we're starting to see some scary stuff. So that ramped up pretty quickly. These are both dramatically more dangerous cards than what I was seeing. So this is good to see this already, just right away. But one of the great things about Zagstruck is that most of the cards that he prefers also tend to be high initiative. So you'll usually end up going first before the Necrons, who often have lower initiative. So that's another way where this is a really good matchup for lower leveled cards. You do have several advantages that can really help newer players get pretty high in this campaign, where some others would be a much tougher matchup. And already, this is a 44-point card. This is an 8-point card. And my 8-point card is almost going to be able to take that thing out. And again, just that being able to do that entire round of attacking without taking any damage back is just incredible. Oh my goodness, he actually did it. There's a kind of dramatic example of Zagstruck's ability plus card levels. So a level 11 Choppa Fizzbang can actually beat a level 44 Triarch Stalker. Excuse me, a level 1, 2, whatever that low-level Triarch Stalker was. 44 cost. So certainly made up his value and was a really nice sort of objective example of how much value Zagstruck can get out of cheaper cards just for their speed and for being able to hit multiple times without getting hit back. So there you have it. There's the Aura of Rage campaign, the Battle of Fordris. They're just messing with me, putting too many consonants in the middle. I see you guys. But hope that's helpful, and yeah, good luck.